Follow Nick, and Nick, we can start when you guys are ready.
There we go. All right. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for our third and final webinar in our online mini-series entitled Love Thy Neighbor. This series is co-organized by the Department of Inter-Orthodox, Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America and the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops of the USA. It highlights the crucial work and mission of Orthodox Christian humanitarian organizations responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me take a moment to thank Giolas Foundation, who is in general our project coordinator and tonight our moderator, and Mike Panazzo, our IT support. Before we turn it over to Father Nicholas to give us the opening prayer, I just want to note that you can use the chat room box, the question and answer feature, or the Facebook live stream to ask your questions, and we will try to share them as much as possible. So thank you. Father Nicholas, if you can give us the opening prayer.
Sure. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit, Amen. You ascended in glory, O Christ, O God, after you filled the disciples with joy, by promising to send them the Holy Spirit, and you blessed them and established their faith that you are the Son of God, the Redeemer of the world. Amen. And welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Nick and Father Nicholas, and thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dean Triandafilou from International Orthodox Christian Charities, or also known as IOCC. So Dean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Spizula. Thank you, Father, Nick, the Giolas Foundation for your support as well. And special thanks to Philoptochos, because if it wasn't for Philoptochos, I probably wouldn't be here for 28 years. And IOCC has enjoyed the support of Philoptochos from the beginning, particularly in my days in Bosnia 27 years ago, whether it was helping get a vehicle or helping us feed people. Philoptochos has always been by our side. IOCC was established in 1992 by the then Standing Conference of Canonical Orthodox Bishops of America. Now we're under the Assembly of Bishops and His Eminence Archbishop of Philoptochos. For the last 28 years, our mission has been humanitarian and development. For the most part, what does that mean? In places like Greece, we've responded to the fires, we've been responding to the economic crisis, helping people with food, helping people with establishing small businesses. Places like Syria, as far as the war, responding there as far as urgent needs, beds, blankets, water, wells, and then post-conflict as far as returning to their homes. Places like Bosnia, helping them reestablish their lives and what have you. Places like Ethiopia, we're helping in the health sector with a disease called podoconiosis. It's a swelling of the feet. Uganda, we're building schools. So it's been with the faithful support of the Orthodox churches in America and U.S. government funding that we've been able to do that for the last 27, 28 years. Particularly if we look at COVID and how we've been responding to the COVID-19 disaster. We went into it with three priorities as far as having to set the priorities as far as what we're going to do and how we're going to focus, and particularly looking, number one, as far as the safety and the health of our staff, here in the States, our staff overseas, our partners overseas, and how they're able to continue the work that we do together. So that was first and foremost. Second was looking at and assessing how we could continue to do our work, particularly since most of the offices and operations were on lockdown. How do you safely provide services? How do you, reach out to people? How do you have continuity so you don't have compounding disasters on top of disaster? Here you have people who already can't eat. How do we reach them in a safe and efficient way? How do we come back from that? So we've been in the midst of planning that, COVID proofing our program so that when we do come back, as far as full gear, we're able to do so in a safe, efficient, and responsible way. Looking at as far as the actual disaster, making sure that we've got continuity of operations, so you don't exacerbate as far as the COVID pandemic is the big piece. We will look at and have been looking at some smaller health interventions as far as helping whether it's, taking temperatures on the border if people are able to cross in from Syria to Lebanon, to, small health projects in Lebanon and Jordan. For the most part, that's what we're looking at. The lion's share of what we're doing as far as COVID has been to activate our frontline program here in the United States, as far as working with the frontliners and professionals to develop a care call program and an outreach as far as providing emotional and spiritual care, to the people in need here in the U.S. So that's what we're building on, and we'll continue to do so here in the States, particularly as we look at hurricane season coming. If you look at as far as the next couple of months, they're projecting to be the highest number of storms that we've seen in the last couple of years. So on top of how do we safely implement programs, how do we safely and responsibly respond to the potentially upcoming disasters here in the U.S. So that's in short for me.
Thank you, Dean. Super under your time, so I appreciate your work. But also, I think in all our minds, IOCC plays a huge role in the incredible work you do overseas and also here, what you're saying domestically, and especially in this time as crisis is hitting us. I really appreciate the care calls that you're starting to roll out. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the program. But I know, even as you say about the hurricanes too, I know many of my friends too already go and serve in the kind of IOCC pairing that you do with Habitat for Humanity and really rebuilding our community. So just thank you for your work for rebuilding community here and abroad always. Thank you, Dean, very much.
Thanks.
I would now like to introduce the Giolas Foundation. So George and Mona Giolas, you guys have the floor.
Hey, it's an honor to be here today following IOCC, one of the greatest Orthodox organizations available. My name is George. This is my wife, Mona. We are part of the Giolas Foundation. We're a 501c3 organization just outside of Chicago. We've been around since late 2016, so we're a fairly new charity. Most of our mission is to take care of the homeless people and assist homeless people and people of need in the Chicagoland area. We have a couple of ministries that are very successful here. One of them is called Feeding 5,000, which we try to create at least 5,000 meals to be made and served, distributed to different organizations throughout the Chicagoland area. We have a volunteer base, so we'll have an event where we actually gather all of the materials and we make all of these meals together. We have between 30 and 60 volunteers that typically attend these events. And once all of the meals are made, they're distributed to different organizations throughout the Chicago West Side. In our few years of doing this ministry, we've been able to feed over 15,000 people. It's one of our most successful ministries. Among others, we have some of our backpack ministry, which we gather a bunch of hygiene products and food and clothing, and most importantly, a Bible. We put them in a backpack along with a gift card to a McDonald's or a place where people can grab a bite to eat, and we distribute them to people out on the street. So it's a wonderful ministry. You really get out there and you see the people in need, and being able to provide them with something is something that's very, very special for us. During the COVID times, it's very interesting because as Orthodox Christians, we have not been able to go to church. We have not been able to enjoy the sacraments, to take the body and blood of Christ. And it's been very difficult for us. Although we watch online and we practice these things in our home, it's not the same as being at church. And going through this pandemic really makes you think about a lot of the people out there who don't know Christ and don't attend church, and how they can go a lifetime feeling the way we felt just here in a few months, and how difficult that is. And it really brings things to light for us. One of the things on our Feeding 5,000 program, what we've been able to do was, instead of having these large events where a lot of people gather, we created a distribution center where people can come to the distribution center, pick up materials to make 100 meals, take them to their homes, make the meals, bring them back to us so that we're able to distribute them. This way we're able to comply with all the regulations of the social distancing, and everybody has masks and gloves while we're doing this, and we're still able to get volunteers involved. And that's the biggest deal for us. And we've been able to create that little program, and it's worked well. So we have, we've done over 1,000 meals since the pandemic started, and we're slated to do another 1,000 within the next week or two. One of the other things that we've done is we've been building kits for IOCC, the hygiene packs and the school packs. That's one of the things that we've been able to do while here on quarantine, where people can just get direction on how to put those things together, and then we arrange for pickup and drop off and things of that nature. So in summary, we've been able to make some of our ministries work, not all of them, but we're blessed to be able to help as many people as we can during this time. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, on our website. You can find all the information about our ministry and how you can help. And we look forward to working with more people in the future.
Thank you, George and Mona. Really appreciate it. And also, I really appreciate what you said about serving in your local context and really witnessing Christ in those small ways. I think especially during these times, it's hard to think about, sometimes you think about missions or something greater in a way to witness Christ, and really the work that each organization here is doing, and even you in your local area, is so important, because ultimately that's who we see face to face. When you're saying that's how we really participate, right, in the community, in the Eucharist, beyond the chalice, so to speak. So thank you for the work you're all doing. I would now like to introduce the Greek Orthodox Ladies Philoptochos Society. So Paulette and Amy will be speaking for Philoptochos tonight. Okay. Oh, Paulette just needs.
Amy, are you going first?
Yeah, so I didn't.
I just had to unmute myself.
Yeah, thank you, Spiridula, for the introduction. The Greek Orthodox Ladies Philoptochos Society is the separately incorporated philanthropic arm of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America. The endeavors of the society are a genuine expression of philanthropia, reflecting an enormous manifestation of love. This agape is evident not only in the millions of dollars of charity dispersed annually to our ministries and commitments and special projects, and with partners like the IOCC, but also in the multitude of meaningful programs and activities which have been an undertaking for almost 90 years. The nature of Philoptochos is to respond, and the word no is not in our vocabulary. In terms of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, Philoptochos took a multi-pronged approach to provide financial, emotional, spiritual, and loving support to individuals and families impacted by COVID-19. The first was to immediately pick organizations where we could give funds. So the National Executive Board approved immediate disbursements to 2 domestic hunger organizations, and we dispersed $25,000 to Feeding America and $25,000 to Meals on Wheels America. In addition, our chapters were forced to suspend their local Feeding the Hungry programs because of social distancing and COVID-19. So they were also encouraged to donate to food banks in their local areas. In addition, our social media promotes community and togetherness and kindness. We instituted a dynamic social media campaign to encourage chapter engagement in projects related to COVID-19. So a shout out to those chapters. We get your photos, we get your stories. Please continue to send them to communications@philoptochos.org. They do not go unnoticed, and we cannot thank you enough for the work that you're doing. Additionally, the Mask On campaign asked chapters to make and distribute masks with their local communities, to assist with the nationwide need for face coverings, and to encourage everyone to follow the CDC guidelines for social distancing and safety practices. Our Power of Thank You campaign, the word thank you can never be said enough. And so we asked chapters to write thank you notes to the heroes among us, the healthcare workers, the grocery staff, building managers, delivery workers. In addition, chapters arranged for food to be delivered to healthcare workers as a special thank you. Thanks to the power of technology, we've been able to promote the continuation of togetherness and community during social isolation. National boards, the national board, the metropolis boards, chapters have been using Zoom and other platforms to hold coffee hours, happy hours, and philo hours to stay connected with their Philoptochos sisters. In addition, we were focused on our live speaker series. What better way to stay online is to continue that. So we were able to get Reverend Dr. Nicholas Lowe, who had a panel, a live speaking event on April 30th, Finding Christ in the Crisis. That video is both on our Facebook videos and our YouTube channel. And additionally, we have our wonderful Director of Social Services, Paulette Giannakopoulos, who has been taking care of the nature of that business. And I will let her speak to that. However, if you are not following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you have not registered on our MailChimp account to receive our mailings, please do so. And Sweetie Lula will give that information once this is over. And with that, I let Paulette lead the way.
Thank you, Amy. Amy's presentation addressed the broad actions of Philoptochos. Mine will focus on the micro aspects of our work, our direct services to Orthodox Christian individuals and families throughout the United States, regardless of their immigration status, services that enable us to help people address and resolve as best as possible the human services challenges they face. We do this through the Department of Social Services, which was initiated in 1987 at the request of His Eminence Archbishop Iakovos of blessed memory. Over the years, there is one truism that has remained constant. Most of the people who reach out to us never thought they'd have to ask anybody for help, let alone us. Why do people turn to us? They seek our help because of economic reasons. They lost a job, or it was cut back. Their public benefits were terminated. It could be a family situation, a divorce, abandonment, a deadbeat parent, domestic violence, or death of the breadwinner. Health is another issue that people turn to us. It could be the chronic or life-threatening illness of the applicant or a member of their family, or it could be because of substance abuse disorder or opioid addictions that impacts not only the person who's the addict, but the entire family. There are also medical bills, out-of-pocket expenses, even for those with health insurance, which is the primary reason for bankruptcies in the United States, is a major thing that we respond to. Mental illness of the applicant or another family member, which frequently causes immobility, in that it hinders the person's ability to follow through on requirements, such as something as simple as recertifying for their public benefits. Many people who suffer from mental illness also either refuse or stop taking medications because of the side effects, or because they start feeling better and they think they're well. These reasons are generally viewed upon as acceptable reasons for people to ask for help. But there's another reason, and that is poor judgment. I'm often asked, why didn't they save? Why didn't they plan? Why didn't they carry life insurance? Why didn't they know better? My response is, well, they didn't. And my response also is that the path to good judgment frequently is paved by a series of poor judgments. And I, for one, do not believe that the penalty for poor judgment should be homelessness. The bottom line is that not all people have the inherent ability to make sound decisions or to change their behaviors on their own. And therefore, part of our social work role is to try to help them relearn and practice how to make better choices. So what do we do when someone asks for our help? We conduct primary and secondary interviews to determine the most effective way to help, so that together we can develop a plan that hopefully will help the person manage on their own in the future. One of the things that we do look for is whether there are underlying reasons for the person to reach out for help. For example, their specific ask may be something simple. However, in the course of the interview, we find out that there's something deeper down that's causing them to ask for help. For instance, a woman seeking help to relocate may not admit it at first, but she may want to relocate because she's the victim of a domestic violence. That has to be dealt with before we can address the broader issue. Our services vary depending on need. We provide supportive counseling. We do not provide clinical counseling, by the way. We provide short-term interventions and interim case management and information and referral. Because we do not have the resources to provide ongoing help, we provide information to our clients about longer-term resources, such as nonprofits, and importantly, the Philoptochos metropolises and the local chapters. The information and referral frequently includes referral for spiritual counseling. So we ask the local chapter or the metropolis to refer the person, if they have not already connected with their local priest, to work with the client as best as possible. Along with information and referral, there is the third arm, which is advocacy. That goes hand in hand with INR, as it allows us to ensure that clients actually do obtain the services and the entitlements to which they are entitled. We help people navigate and negotiate complex service systems, especially for persons with cultural barriers or language barriers who cannot access the mainstream services on their own. And then finally, we provide financial assistance. Depending on the circumstances of the applicant, we award financial assistance grants always paid to the vendor. We do not provide cash assistance to the applicant, him or herself. Our financial grants help prevent evictions and mortgage foreclosures. We pay utility arrears. We do relocate victims of domestic violence. We arrange for emergency fuel deliveries so that a house will remain heated and lights will be turned on. We also arrange and pay for funerals for indigent Orthodox Christian members of our community who otherwise would be cremated. And in the past several years, many of these referrals actually are sent to us through the Office of the Medical Examiners. We do provide interim financial help to persons waiting for their benefits to kick in, or who are ineligible for public benefits because of their immigration status, their age, their income may be a few dollars over the threshold. And by doing this, we give the person some breathing space so that they can figure out what they can do to move forward. Very importantly, though, with all of our financial grants, we are very careful to provide it in a way that it will not be counted as income, so that we do not jeopardize or delay the person's acceptance for public benefits. When the coronavirus pandemic began, we went into high gear. We streamlined our application process. We publicized our services through our social media. Thank you, Amy. Through our local chapters and metropolises, our social services networks, and basically we literally leaped right in. But because we must be accountable to our donors for every dollar that we spend, we continue to vet every case to ensure that requests are legitimate and we are not duplicating assistance that they're receiving or they have received from another source. Since the pandemic began, we have awarded 44 grants for a total of nearly $75,000, with most going to rent and mortgage arrears. For those who say, and I've heard this many times, well, they wouldn't be evicted anyway during the pandemic. My response is, this is not true. At some point, the piper is going to have to be paid. And if they lost their jobs and are receiving unemployment insurance benefits, if they are eligible, and many of our clients are not, my question is, how are they expected to pay the rent arrears once the back rent is due? And regarding mortgage payments, another thing that I've heard many times is, well, tell them to apply for a 3-month forbearance from their mortgage company. Many of our clients do that. However, not all mortgage companies add those 3 months to the back end of the loan. And therefore, at the end of the 3-month forbearance, they're expected to pay the full amount up front. So again, how are they supposed to do that if they're not working? I think you get the picture. The pandemic has totally thrown many people into a state that I generally refer to as walking a tightrope across the Grand Canyon in gale force winds. One of the other changes that we made is how we respond to mental health needs of persons who have been affected by the coronavirus pandemic. While we always screen for mental illness, because of the increased anxiety and stress the pandemic and the lockdowns have created, we included on our application a specific question about this and a specific question about whether they would like a referral to a mental health counselor. We don't just ask the question though. We don't just give them a phone number and say, pick up the phone and call such and such a service. We refer them to a specific local counselor. And since many people lost their health insurance or have waived paying their premiums because of their loss of employment, we offer to pay up to 10 sessions of mental health therapy. In late February, we began a 7-week telephone caregiver support group, a topic that clearly resonates in our community as registrants hailed from Maine to Hawaii. Just a few weeks later, the quarantines and lockdowns began. So we pivoted to respond to the new normal of caregiving based on concerns raised by the participants. Some of our reframed discussions included, how do we safely let a home health aide into our home, especially if he or she were coming from someone else's home? How do we help shut-ins deal with isolation, not being able to physically visit their adult children or see them, or their grandchildren or their friends? We dealt with discussions of the fear of being infected with the virus, both by the caregivers as well as the care receivers themselves, by going to stores and other public places. And the one topic that resonated among all of the participants was their inability to physically go to church for Sunday liturgies, and whether and how they would be able to celebrate Easter with all of its glories in the face of social distancing. For many of the older care receivers, we also dealt with an unexpected issue: the isolation, the shortages of foods and other products, the health warnings for persons in their age cohort, the empty streets, very little traffic, brought to mind to them their experiences in Greece during World War II. Many of these obviously were very bad memories. We tried to turn that around to something that was more positive, and we started talking about developing oral histories among the older people. Since our inception, our work has been informed by regularly monitoring our social environment to enable us to respond proactively and with cultural sensitivity to the human service challenges faced by our community. And in many cases, we learn along with our constituents. With God's grace and with your support, we will continue to work diligently to mitigate the many problems as we can. In closing, I'd like to share with you a Bible quote that a client of mine sent me just this week that I think represents our work. It's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declared the Lord, plans to prosper you and never to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. During these difficult times, we all need to know that God's plan for us is giving us a future and a hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. Thank you, Amy, very much. And also, I just want to highlight the magnitude of what Philoptochos does, because really, we needed more time to talk about everything that you all do, whether it's on the local level through the chapters or the national level. So I really commend you and thank you both, and obviously the whole staff, but also the ladies and people that are involved in Philoptochos, because we know, at least in our parishes, growing up in the Greek Archdiocese, that we can always turn to our Philoptochos chapter when there's a need or some kind of need we want to meet in the community and we want to reach out. So thank you both. Right now we're going to pivot to the Q&A. We have a little bit more time this week, which is very exciting. So I already have some questions for each of the panelists that I will ask each of them. And then you can continue to put your questions in the chat box or on Facebook Live or in the Q&A section of the webinar here. Just a quick thing, and then I will also bring this up again at the end, but you will be receiving, all participants will receive a toolkit at the end of the webinar. And this toolkit will include all the information the panelists spoke about, so their mission and what they do and ways for you to get involved. And also there are links to subscribe to their different platforms to figure out how you can donate materials, donate financially, or just other ways to get involved. So I'll remind everyone again at the end, but you will be receiving that as well at the end of the webinar. So the first question is for Dean from IOCC. So the first question, Dean, is with the pandemic lockdown, how has IOCC's services across the world changed, and have some of them resumed or changed, or will they be changing as the COVID slowly starts to lift?
Yes, thank you. We, at the beginning of the crisis, we established a crisis response team that allowed us to track and assess what was happening in each of the field offices, including headquarters, and making sure that we followed the local and national guidelines, which meant most of our offices closed at some point. It was staggered, as you go through the timetable, with Greece and Lebanon probably shutting down pretty early. So yes, we had to close the offices, but everybody, as far as all staff, we had kind of pre-planned. And so all staff were working from home. So we actually haven't stopped full operations. We were able to continue to do reporting, check in with people via Zoom. We actually did some online training for farmers in Georgia, places like that. So some activities we were able to keep moving with remote access. Others, like I said earlier, we were able to do some things in Lebanon, some small health interventions, kind of checking temperatures, what have you. Since in the last couple of weeks, we've shifted from crisis response to return to work team. And so we're putting plans together on how to do the assessments on each office and studying the laws and the guidelines that are coming out, so that we can continue and kind of reopen the offices in full-blown activity, with monitoring, visiting beneficiaries, going back to the camp in Azraq and Jordan, things like that. So yes and no, we shut down, but didn't shut down.
Thank you, Dean. So the next question is for George and Mona from the Giolas Foundation. So the question is, what types of meals are prepared by volunteers at home, and how and who prepares the meals, and what type of meals are distributed?
Okay, so typically when we do this event, is a turkey sandwich and a ham sandwich, 2 hard-boiled eggs, a fruit. Typically we have an apple or an orange, a bag of chips, a bottled water, a snack, whether it be a multi-grain granola bar, or nuts, or something like that, a napkin, and most importantly, a spiritual gift. We either provide a prayer card or a pocket cross, and that creates one meal. So typically we do these events. We can, if you contact us, we can come to your church or come to a local place and do an event on site where we will provide all of the food. And all we would do is ask that we get volunteers together to come together and help make everything. If there's people who want to donate, they can certainly donate the materials to make the lunches, or a monetary gift. And then we have specific people that we've been blessed to have people donate a lot of these supplies from stores, or we have some pretty good purchasing power because we do it so often.
Thank you, George. The next question is for Philoptochos. So the question is, what is the relationship between the social service departments of the chapters, metropolises, and the national level?
I'm going to let Paulette answer that question.
I'm sorry, I was just unmuting. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. So the question is, what is the relationship between the social service departments of the chapters, metropolises, and the national level of Philoptochos?
Okay, we all work together for one, and we collaborate as much as possible. Our protocol is generally that if a person needs assistance, they should first turn to their local chapter. When the chapter is not able to meet all of the needs of the person, they will refer to the metropolis Philoptochos, and then the metropolis Philoptochos will refer to national to supplement what the other two levels have done. Frequently, though, I receive referrals directly, and with the person's permission, I refer back to the chapter or to the metropolis. One of the other things that I've done is I've developed a cadre of social services liaisons within each of the metropolises, almost all of the metropolises, the Philoptochos metropolises, so that if there is a social service case that I refer back to the region or locally, I will ask the social services person to shepherd the request through our process. So we collaborate and coordinate as much as possible.
Thank you, Paula. Amy, do you want to add anything to that?
There really isn't. Like
Okay.
she said, we work in coalition, and there's always, if you start with one, you go back to the other. So it really is a 360-degree situation.
Awesome, thank you. So we have another second question for IOCC. The question is, can you tell us more about the care calls?
Sure. The care calls we established, working with the frontliners. The frontliners are volunteer priests and lay leaders who have been trained in emotional care and emotional and spiritual care. Usually they deploy as far as response to the natural disasters, to the Gulf, Katrina, places like that. And since we're not able to deploy, we had a small working group of the frontliners and healthcare professionals to establish the protocols and what have you, as far as to give guidelines as far as people being able to reach out. I mean, because we're all stuck at home, right? And everyone's dealing with pressure and fear and anxiety and all these things on top of each other. It's great to be home with your family and your kids, but I know now that I've got a 6'4", 200-pound kid back at home, he's eating me out of house and home. It creates a whole different set of pressure, right? So the care calls was similar to what other groups are doing. It's a way of reaching out and just checking on your neighbor, checking on your loved ones. And that's what we put together. And there's a video on the website that you can go to that helps kind of introduce that as well.
Thank you, Dean. There's another question for the Giolas Foundation. So the question says, well, first it says, God bless you for serving the homeless in the Chicago area. And can you provide our Philoptochos group with the details of your meal kit program so the volunteers can prepare? They would like to do something similar in the state of California or in the local area there.
Absolutely. If you contact us on our webpage, we'll be more than happy to share with you exactly how we run the program and how you can run it during COVID. And we can send you the menu. We'll be happy to share everything that we're doing with you. If you just go to our website and click the contact us page, we'll be more than happy. Or if you want to even call, we can speak about it as well. We'll be happy to share whatever we're doing.
Thank you. And also all their information to contact and volunteers in the toolkit that you'll receive at the end. The next question is for Philoptochos. So the question is specifically towards Paulette. The question is, which designation for our local Philoptochos group do we donate in order to help you do more of what you do?
What can they donate?
Yeah, I guess who do they donate to best support the work that you're doing through the local?
They can donate to Philoptochos and designate the funds either for social services or for the COVID relief fund.
Thank you. And can there, just since you mentioned the COVID relief fund, there was a question, is the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese COVID relief fund the same as the Philoptochos, or are they different?
No, they're different.
We're very fortunate that we're providing so much support to our members. So 2 funds, both from Philoptochos and from the Archdiocese.
Awesome, thank you both. So I'm gonna pose a general question to all the panelists, and I'm gonna give you kind of around the way we've been doing it to answer the question. So this question is asking for each of your organizations, is there a way that youth can get involved, whether it's a service-oriented or mission trip? And if or so to speak, can they receive training for outreach and mission work? So we'll start with Dean for.
So, yeah, we're in interesting times when it comes to volunteerism. Like George was referring to earlier, we have our KITS program, and we're trying to see as far as how we continue to do that, as far as people giving something hands-on to do, as far as collecting kits that we can use here in the U.S. and abroad. Our volunteer build program that you referred to earlier, it's on hold for now until we get a better idea as far as what's happening as far as the storm season, as well as the various states opening up, whether or not we'll be able to host volunteers. Youth can be engaged as long as they're with adults. One of the other things that we'll be launching in the coming weeks, we have a Serve Extreme, which is training youth as far as service leaders, as far as getting engaged in volunteerism. This year, we're looking at shifting that to a virtual opportunity, and we'll be posting more about that in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Dean. George, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Our events are typically held at church halls or places that is very family friendly. So we certainly invite everybody to bring children of all ages. A lot of youth come who have to do volunteer work, so we credit them the hours at the events. We don't do missionary work right now besides the backpack delivering, but that's something that we really haven't expanded to. So the best opportunity for us is doing stuff at home, putting kits together for IOCC. And when they come to live events, we've had quite a few people come and fulfill their volunteer hours through our organization, and we're more than happy to have them. The more volunteers, the better.
Thank you. Philoptochos, I'm going to ask you to answer the same question.
Most of the volunteer opportunities that Philoptochos offers are through the local chapter organizations. And we urge all women 18 years and older to please join their Philoptochos chapters in their own churches. They are completely volunteer run. And the more people who are available to help with programs and activities, the better off we will all be throughout our community. Amy, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, and we don't offer mission work, but as as it was said, all activities are family friendly. So start your children young. And behind every Philoptochos woman, if she happens to be married, is a friend of Philoptochos, because the women don't do it on their own. Their partners are very much involved and understand that these women are answering their call and their need to do philanthropic endeavors. So start them. You don't need to be 18 to be a friend of Philoptochos, and then when you are officially 18, join, because the next generation of women need to, we want you, we need you, and everybody has something that they can contribute.
We also encourage the chapters to develop volunteer opportunities that are from easy to hard.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be somebody who is only available for a one-shot deal.
Mm-hmm.
Other people may be willing to volunteer on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis. And it's important to basically respond to whatever time frame and interest somebody has, so that we could use the person power that we have within our community as best as possible. The other reason that it's helpful to do easy to hard is that people's lives change.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody may have a child and they no longer can do the kind of volunteer work that they were doing before. So if there's something else that they can fall back on, we haven't lost them. We have just moved them onto something that will keep them engaged with us. So it's something that I think is extremely important, not only for Philoptochos, but for all organizations.
And to add to that, we have an indirect that we give an idea to chapters, where we ask them to ask their members, give me one. So to echo what Paulette was saying, maybe someone can't go and help do a meal packing event or distribute clothing or some other big fundraiser that a church group, the chapter group is having. However, there's a lot of behind the scenes work, such as creating the information to do the public relations work for the event, or now with technology booming, using your social media consistently, getting out the newsletters. Everybody has a skill set that they can offer, which varies and is just as equally important.
Thank you both. There's another general question that I'm going to pose to all the panelists. It has to do with fundraising, especially in this time of social distancing. So the question is, what innovative ways have you found to fundraise, since many people are still social distancing and perhaps larger gatherings will not be happening for a while? So what is the best way to think about fundraising and different ways to do that? So I'm going to open it for Dean first.
So yeah, we historically we've got metropolitan committees who are volunteer groups across the country. Cleveland, San Francisco, and Chicago, for the last have been our core cities, and others. We do a lot of events during the year, and given the current crisis with the shutdowns, we've been looking at how to shift to virtual events. So a lot of the physical events, whether they're dinners or what have you, they're shifting to virtual no-show events. We've had one already. As far as Cleveland, we've got one scheduled this weekend in Denver, where we try to recreate the program online through a webinar. We have the same speakers, we have the same, volunteers as far as welcoming people and question and answers, very similar to what we're doing today, and try to recreate the event virtually, just like we recreate the board meetings and how we're recreating training for staff overseas.
Thank you, Dean. George, I'm going to also open it for you. Oh.
I think they froze.
Okay, Philoptochos, if you want to go first, and then when George comes back.
Amy, this one's yours.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Unmute. I think we're both trying to do it at the same time. Well, to be quite honest, we never say no to funds coming in. However, we have to really say our chapters have been phenomenal, because a lot of them lost their spring fundraisers. These big events that they have, which bring in a lot of funds for our monthly commitment program, but the money keeps coming in despite the lack of fundraising, and the chapters continue to support all of our commitments and our stewardship. Some examples, events have been going no-show and virtual. I know the Metropolis of Detroit did something where they had their no-show event, and they were people were doing things in memory of or in honor of, and they did a campaign via social media. Another local chapter that I'm familiar with, they did a virtual Mother's Day card where people could submit money, and then the image was put on social media channels and then distributed through the church newsletter. I would say the best advice is to get creative and make sure what you're doing is safe. And right now, we're all in this unique dynamic where the way we all, in general, as a Greek Orthodox community, we celebrate life together. And so now we have to be together apart. And the chapters are still finding ways, again, as Dean was saying, with the no-show event and going virtual. Traditionally, our convention has been a convention of celebration together, but now we are going virtual as well in August. So it's a trial and error right now.
Thank you. George and Mona, we lost you, but I'm going to ask you the same question about innovative fundraising this time.
Yeah, we're sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties this afternoon.
Yes.
One of the things that we have been absolutely blessed with is that every donation that we receive, 100% of it goes towards our ministry. We're completely volunteer based, and any overhead that the foundation has is paid for through us, through our family. So every penny does go to ministry. What we've seen during this COVID times is we've seen a lot less monetary donations, but there's been an overwhelming support from grocery stores and some of these other businesses that have been able to sustain during this time. They've been very generous, providing all types of food for multiple ministries, not just the ministries that we run, but even for our local church that started a new ministry as well. And we've just had overwhelming support. A lot of people want to do good things, and what we've seen the most is when you're able to provide an avenue for them to donate, whether it be supplies or something specific, as opposed to the monetary gift. We've seen a lot more success go through that route. So we really don't have anything innovative we're doing, but the Lord always works, and we end up where we are, able to just continue doing work.
Thank you. I have one more general question for the panelists. And the question is, in your experiences, where are there gaping holes in terms of humanitarian help? So I'm going to give that to Dean again first.
From my experience, every and all disasters, big or small, are going to have gaps, right? And I think one of the lessons that we've learned, that I've learned, is making sure you stay in your lane, right? So there's going to be a tendency to want to reach out and fill that, right? So having some flexibility as far as funding, making sure that you're coordinating with other groups, to fill those gaps. Like in Greece, and that's what IC was built on. How do you fill these unique gaps that others aren't able to do? Not all of them are going to get filled, right? In some cases, as the disaster protracts and the longer it gets, the less funding is going to be available. And so you're going to find the bigger gaps. Like in a place like Greece, for the fires, everyone's the disaster. Well, how do you help in a more efficient way? Well, we provided animal feed, for the farmers so they weren't able to graze anymore. So, in COVID, we're doing, as far as here in the States, where is it within our skill sets, within our experience, that we can fill a gap? And we felt here in the States was emotional and spiritual care. Currently we're assessing the needs overseas. What is it that we can fill responsibly within our lane?
Thank you, Dean. George, I'm going to give you the floor as well.
I think that Dean couldn't say it any better. I think that mostly during these times, spiritual help is something that is needed the most, and getting that message out there. And, the tough part when you're doing this type of work is dealing with people that have to know that it's a two-way street, that you can only help them so much spiritually and physically before they have to decide that that's what's going to be best for them, and for them to follow the avenues to help get themselves in a better place. And that's something that collectively we all have to work at together to make them grow spiritually, to be able to accept that, and to be able to put themselves in a better scenario.
Thank you. Paulette and Amy. Oh no. Okay.
What Dean said, I'd like to echo the same. It is important to recognize what you can do as an organization and what your limitations are, and then where there is a limitation, or perhaps be a little more flexible and partner. Philoptochos traditionally has partnered with many organizations such as IOCC, so we can give help, but not necessarily with our members directly going to that area where the need arises. And traditionally, sorry, I'm blanking out for a moment. Paulette, do you want to fill in while I gather my thoughts?
Let me just say that I think that participation among the population is really something that all of us need. I think that everybody has great ideas, and it's just important to literally come up with a list and then prioritize them and determine which are the ones that we should be dealing with, which should we farm out to other organizations, and which can we partner with other organizations, so that we can make the greatest impact for our entire community and as an entire community. I don't think we should see ourselves as individual groups or individual organizations. I would hope that we see ourselves as the Greek American community, or in the case of IOCC, including people throughout the entire country. In terms of us, we deal not only with Greek Orthodox, but all Orthodox Christians. So I think that we just need to welcome as much participation as we can, and prioritize, as Dean said, staying in our lane, but also collaborating with with appropriate organizations, whether they be Orthodox ministries or other groups within our framework.
And to add to that, which is why when COVID-19 broke out, Philoptochos has been feeding the hungry almost for 90 years. The project was, of course, labeled by President Maria Logis. However, now with that being suspended and the excitement that the chapters had to fulfill this work, it was important to find organizations domestically within the United States where our funds could help the most, which is why Feeding America and Meals on Wheels were chosen.
Thank you both. So now I'm going to give each of the panelists again in the same round a minute or so to wrap up and give kind of final commentary of what they would like to share or any kind of final thoughts. So we'll start with Dean again.
We've been blessed and we're extremely grateful. As an institution for the last 20 years, people have been very responsive, very loving, very caring, and very generous. And so special thanks to the hierarchs, as far as their leadership, special thanks as far as, Philoptochos and Giolas Foundations today as the other panelists, but to everybody in the pan-Orthodox world and who's reached out and support and touch the work that we do. We're extremely grateful. And a special shout out to my boy, Nick Anton, for his role at the Assembly of Bishops. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Dean. George, now I'm going to give you a minute as well.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here. And we just want to let everybody know that this type of work, this type of ministry, it is stewardship. It's true stewardship. It's something that we have to do. And our Bible verse that comes to mind here is Acts 20:35. Remembering the words of the Lord Jesus Christ himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive.
Thank you. Philoptochos, Paula and Amy.
Well, the Philoptochos way is that we continue to meet the need whenever and wherever it occurs, and that will never change.
There's one point that I'd like to make, though, since all of us deal with food and meals. As a social worker, I have to say that I, for one, am very upset that we no longer refer to it as hunger, but it's now referred to as food insecurity. I would like to go back to using the term hunger because that's what people are. They are hungry. They turn to us for food, not because they are insecure, but because they and their children are hungry. So I left my lane, Dean.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. In the chat right now, I'm posting the link to the toolkit. So I just want to thank the panelists again tonight for being with us and for your incredible work. And we pray that God continues to bless your ministry. Also, thank you to the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops who co-partnered this event with us. We're really grateful. And thank you for Father Nicholas Kazarian, the Ecumenical Officer and Director of our department, the Ecumenical Office of the Greek Archdiocese, for supporting this project. And really, thank you for everyone who watched and was with us and asked questions. And we're really grateful that you were here. And really, we are hoping that this will continue to raise awareness and really share the voices of the organizations that are here, but also so that you can get involved. So with that, as I mentioned before, the toolkit will be sent out as it is now in the chat. It will be posted on Facebook in about 5 minutes. And this toolkit is for your reference to see what organizations are around you, where you can get involved locally or whatever it may be. But specifically right now in these times, as we're still social distancing and being very cautious and aware of the pandemic and the time that we live in. But ultimately, I think as it's been echoed on this call, prayer is the most important thing. And we really pray that God continues to bless all of our ministries and the work, and he may enlighten us to continue to do this work that is really important in the US. So thank you everyone for watching. If you're on Zoom, you're gonna receive a short survey as soon as you X out, and it'll be posted on Facebook right now. If you can complete it, it's 2 minutes long. We would really appreciate it. But thank you everyone for joining us, and we pray that God continues to be with all of us in all these times. And thank you again for all the panelists for joining us. So thank you everyone.